He was born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in Utomic, which is now Croatia, to a Serbian father, and little is known about his mother. His father was a soldier. At 9 years old, he went to Army Boarding School, Army High School, and finally Infantry School. At just 19, he was a lieutenant and saw action in the 1878 annexation and occupation of Bosnia-Herzegovina. He would then do a few lecturing tours before being posted in various posts throughout the empire. He rose to Major, Lieutenant Colonel, and finally Colonel in 1897. He was sent to Prague until 1904, where he became a Major General. Zagreb and Kočice followed, and he rose to the rank of Field Marshal Lieutenant and General of the Infantry, a feat not only for a Slav but in peacetime in general to move up the ranks that quickly. He became the only Southern Slav in the whole Austro-Hungarian Empire to reach that rank, which wasn't long, but still congrats. He began the war on the Eastern Front as he already started to show his stripes in the defense of Birmasul. He had his relief force storm the fortress and drove the Russians back for now. They crossed the River Sans, but the Russians soon countered attack, but Boroević unit sent them on the retreat again, but at heavy losses. In 1915, his unit was in the Carpathian offensive, which was a disaster, but it was ordered by the General Chief of Staff, Konrad von Hötzendorf. They were ill-prepared and ill-equipped for such an attack in the frozen mountains. Huge casualties from fighting, but mostly from the winter, as the Russians gained ground all winter long, sometimes unopposed. It was taken back, however, from the joint Austro-German Gorlice-Tarnów offensive, which got the Russians out of Hungary for good. Boroević was off again as he was transferred to the new Italian front, the Isonzo front to be more exact. The 5th Army, or the Isonzo Army, was under his command. Konrad von Hötzendorf actually wanted him to defend more flat open ground, but Boroević wanted to defend the mountains peak for peak. He also saw this as giving the Italians a foothold in Slavic lands, and in lands close to the heartland of the empire, and in artillery range from Vienna. He set up his defences on the Soko River, or the more infamous Isonzo River. It was defense to the end for Boroević. He saw that losing the Italian front would lose the war for the empire. He was the underdog as the Italians had more troops, more guns, and Entente lend-lease gave them better equipment. But Boroević had strategy and home field advantage on his side, and men ready to fight and die for the empire. He also had the high grounds, and the generals of the Italian army were no match for him 12 times. He held for 11 attacks, and finally after 3 years, led the famous Battle of Caporetto, or the 12th Battle of the Isonzo River, almost to Viennes, and for his actions at the front he was promoted for every attack that he defended, finally becoming the highest Slavic general on the 1st of February 1918. He was a bit uptight and a bit cocky and a bit arrogant, but he was meticulous to detail and wanted everyone under him to be the same. He was loved as he hated incompetence, he hated senseless slaughter, and he hated senseless demands like the Carpathian offensives. He was the opposite of Konrad von Hötzendorf and was very skeptical of bold offensive moves. He was nicknamed the thick-headed Croat, however. Even though he was a good leader, he was still arrogant and always reminded them who was in command. He did shake off these habits a bit and wasn't the thick-headed Croat, but the lion of the Isonzo River. The war was over, however, and after his last medal from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which ceased to exist, it was gone. Everything after this war. He has statues and monuments put up in his honor during the war years that were torn down and soon accused of wasting Slavic and Balkan lives in the defense of a rotten and oppressive empire, the prison of nations. His son had drowned, and his home was confiscated by the kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. It did not even end at his house, as his bank account, personal belongings, and even his decorations were confiscated. He was homeless and barely fed himself from a veteran's benefit from the military order of Mother Teresa, the Austro-Hungarian highest honor. He tried to gain citizenship in the Austrian Republic and the kingdom, but it failed. They refused his military service and pension. A man without a country, barely any food, no shelter, and a few months ago he was the greatest general of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His alliance made him unwanted from former nations of the country of Austria-Hungary that he had solely defended. He went into a spiral and then depression, and finally died with no honors and just his wife by his side. Because of his family, half Croatian, half Serbian, the country he served, Austria-Hungary, Yugoslavia, which was communist, and the Yugoslav Wars, which made 6 different republics from the former kingdom of Yugoslavia, it didn't make sense to talk about the Serbian Croat who defended the Austro-Hungarian Empire and was a staunch monarchist. Wars followed, the veterans from grunts to generals, homelessness, shell shock, and even being hated by your fellow countrymen for fighting. It was the foreshadowing of the 60s and unpopular wars to come. But those are stories for another day. But rest in peace, thick-headed Croat, the line of the Isonzo River. Anyway guys, a bit depressing, a bit bleak, but just a reminder that sometimes war does follow you. You might not be shot in the head one day in 1914, but you will die from shell shock, depression, or losing loved ones, or even the simple fact of fighting and being hated by your countrymen 5 years later. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. A bit bleak, but sometimes wars can be heroic in the wartime era, but after the war, you're either hated, loved, or sometimes hated, loved, and forgotten. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something, and remember, hug a Veteran Day, or something. That should be something, but you can never forget the veterans, both men, women, black, white, Asian, and remember guys, lest we forget, it's not just about famous battles and famous people, but it's about the many men who lost their lives, many million from the Somme to Verdun, Gorlice-Otonov, Brusilov, the siege of Kut, and remember all the men that died. Because sometimes we love someone, we hate someone, but the worst feeling in the world is to be forgotten, are not loved or hated or speaked about at all. Very bleak, but you know, we had the communists yesterday, so you know, you could only transition from something interesting to something bleak. But anyway, hope you learned something. Alright, for the last time, boys and girls, let's remember the tick-headed Karat. You know what? He was the lion of the Asunzo River. Learn something.